You want to start a service business, and your first thought was, I'm going to start a coaching business?
My
Or
first
did you
thought,
go through
no,
iterations?
my first thought was, I have a six pack. I have 100 men in my DMs a week. Why don't I just try to turn the tables and see if I can say, hey, I can help you look like this.
If somebody asks, well, tell me what you've done that makes it worth it, I can say, I've created an $800,000 revenue swing in a matter of a few months. I can say I've
$800,000
turned
per month swing, correct?
per month, $800,000 per month swing. Yeah.
Yeah, in the DMs I'll help you. Yeah, you know what? I'll just send you a plan. Yeah, I'll just jump on a call with you. Like just kind of jumping into all these things that, like, okay, but then how am I going to make any money doing this? And
What you're doing for yourself there is you are setting a behavior-based goal, not an outcome-based goal. And I think
Yes.
one of the mistakes, I'm going to go and get 5 clients in my first month. You can't actually control whether or not that's going to happen. What you can control is
a very clean place to draw the line is you can give away all the information for free. In a service-based business, it's the implementation that people will pay for
networking. I have the very similar 3-word thing: be seen, be known, then be heard, in that order.
3 minutes in, we're unhinged already.
So it'd actually be kind of a funny lead-in, I think, for this. So, and I see you already started recording. So. All right. So, like I said, I don't know if this person is just, I'm assuming this person was just cold calling, because the message just reads like things that did not happen, for sure. Did not happen.
What message? What are we talking about here?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn, obviously, and I got this message, like a DM on LinkedIn today, or yesterday, actually. And it's from someone named, well, I won't name them for the sake of the podcast, but
name them. First name.
Name them, dox them, Jonna, someone named Jonna. And the byline for Jonna says, empowering others to explore career ownership. And then the subject line says career possibilities. So it's, Dear Robert, April came across your profile and was impressed by your experience. I'm sure she did, and I'm sure she was.
Pause. We're breaking this down line by line. So you're telling me that your boss or whoever personally reached out to you, told you about Rob, my man, which, to be fair, nothing about this is fishy yet. You're awesome, so it makes sense. But then, here's the part I don't understand. Reaches out to you so that you can reach out to Rob.
Correct. The conversation. Hey, Jonna, I came across this dude's profile today. I was super impressed by his experience. I would like you to DM him to see about his career interests and possibilities. So she goes, the Entrepreneur Source partners with individuals like yourself. You don't know anything about me. The Entrepreneur Source partners with individuals like yourself to explore diverse professional possibilities, including the potential for business ownership or a career of independent corporate America, or a career independent of corporate America. Like an executive recruiter, April, one of our career ownership coaches, offers services at no cost to you. I'm sure it's absolutely free. This means there is no obligation on your part. April is particularly interested in understanding the next steps that you are considering for your career and discussing whether any opportunities she has might align to your aspirations. Would you be open to a brief 20 to 30 minute call next week to explore this further? This would be a great chance for April to learn more about what you are looking for and to share insights from past clients, which you can also find at her, and then it gives me her link. Thank you for your time, Robert, and I wish you a good week ahead. Jonna.
Oh, man.
And then it's got like a link to their eSource coaching thing. And it's literally one of these. So if you click the link, it's basically, if you click the link, it takes you kind of to her website, to April's website. And it talks, it's a lot like our website for the consulting stuff, where it's like, here's what we do, here's a little bit of what the process looks like. And then it's like,
I feel like I'm offended
schedule a call.
Like, you're just like, yeah, these people, they're idiots. They message me. You know the website you made, Trevor? It looks just like that.
No. The website is fine. What's weird is the narrative of like April came across your profile and was so impressed that she didn't bother to reach out to you directly. She asked me.
Full disclaimer to anybody that listens to this. So Rob and I usually start these meetings. We we talk shit for like 2 minutes at most, and then one of us says, "Great, let's press record and let's start." So Rob starts telling me this story, and I'm like, "Let's just open with this. Like, I want to have an organic response to it." And I totally thought when you were telling me, like, you probably read the first two sentences, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be a good gag. It'll be a good intro to what we're talking about." My marketing senses are tingling. My brain feels like it just wants to explode, and I want
in
to
a good way or
no, in a terrible way.
In a snarky way.
In a snarky way, like
spill it.
Yeah, like Spider-Man somewhere, and he senses that like somebody needs help. That's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
Like I want to reach out to
Does she need help, or do I need help from her?
Well, I mean, to be fair, no.
Should I respond with a link to our consulting company? Say, it seems like you need some help. Please feel free to schedule.
No, honestly,
schedule a call.
So, fun fact, I've done that before, but I do it in an entirely different way. Because, so with cold messaging, everybody's already got these barriers up, and it's already just so awkward. So what I started doing, because I probably get a dozen of them on Twitter every day. I think with Twitter, the way the algorithm works is once you have a certain amount of following, there's just a certain gravitational pull towards your account. And so I get a lot of those messages. That was a humble brag. I have a lot of followers. Anyways.
That's not because of our consulting company, Trevor.
Yeah. And if you want a lot of followers, click the link in my bio.
We'll help you out.
We're 3 minutes in and we're unhinged already. But what I'll do is I will take people's messages and I'll screen record with myself. Like I'll even have my face on the camera and I'll be like, "Hey man, so glad you reached out to me." And I'll break down their message and like piece by piece where it could have been better, and I'll send it back to them.
Oh,
every now and then, like once in a blue moon, somebody will reply with like, "Oh, thanks, man." I'd say probably 50% of people don't reply, and then the other 45%, it's some variation of like, "Fuck you, dude." Like,
I mean, that's an insufferable response,
it is,
to say the least.
It is, but to be fair, like if you're gonna reach out to someone who's done, I mean, collectively probably $20 million in sales through funnels just like that, and you're trying to learn how to do it, like the least I can do is just help, like, right? Like I'm just paying it forward.
But in all honesty, do you honestly think that they have actually looked at my LinkedIn profile?
No,
I think she was searching some keywords, immediately hit DM. I don't think she spent 30 seconds actually perusing and being like, "Is this somebody that we should reach out to?"
Yeah, joking aside, I mean I call that spray and pray. There's two ways you can do cold DMs. You can play a volume game where you're just sending as many as you possibly can, or you can actually take the time, sit down. It's going to probably triple how long it'll take probably more than that, probably 5x how long it'll take per DM. But if she would have sat down, looked at your profile and said, "Hey, I saw your experience in healthcare. That really intrigued me. I'm sure your time in healthcare during COVID was very trying, and you're still doing it. That tells me a lot about who you are as a person." Right? Like, I'm just riffing that, but it's like you can say something that's generic,
something a little bit more personable.
But it's clear that I read your profile.
Right.
At this point too, in 2024, there's probably softwares that'll like auto do that for you.
Yeah, I mean, I even like AI software is going to get a little bit more personal than that, right?
For sure. You give me 3 days and I could teach ChatGPT how to do that for us. I mean, it's just not that hard.
So this does lead to the question, though, and I think this is what we want to talk about today. You're somebody who has had to go out and chase sales, had to go out and get your first client. You built several businesses. You started from scratch. You had to figure out, like, how do I go get this first client? And I know that you and I have talked about that before in terms of even my hangups about getting into consulting is not, do I think I can consult? Obviously, I've got a track record of success there. It's how do I go out? Every time I've done it, it's been people who have approached me. So when you're starting from scratch, you just rolled out your brand, you've just rolled out your company. How do you go about getting your first client? Like, where do you even begin?
I was thinking about you this morning in bed when I first woke up, like I always do, and and I opened up my phone, which I don't normally have my phone in the bedroom, but terrible night of sleep.
You woke up to a text message from me, in fairness.
That's probably what it was. Actually, that is what it was. That's what.
I realized after I texted you how early it still was, and I was like, well, he's got his notifications silenced anyways. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Well, and normally I'm up, like for most people, uncomfortably early. Like I have a business partner in Spain, and we joke that I'm usually up before him, and he's 6 hours ahead. Yeah, and he's 6 hours ahead of me. He's on the east side too, or on the east side in Barcelona, So 6 hours ahead of me, and I'm usually up before him. But anyways, I wake up. What I don't normally do is scroll through my phone, but I had brought my phone up from the kitchen where I normally leave it. Anyways, none of that matters. But I opened up Instagram, and one of the first things I saw was a reel from Alex Hormozi, who I think I've told you this. I'm so glad I had Alex Hormozi when I was starting off because he's so talented at speaking to beginners. And now that I've been doing this long enough of what a lot of what he says, I kind of just roll my eyes at. Thankful for him.
So
I've kind of outgrown
pause for a second. Okay. Give me context. Who is Alex Hormozi?
Yeah,
I don't know who he is.
Alex Hormozi is. That's a good question. Who is Alex Hormozi? So he's the founder of a company called Gym Launch, which it was a service-based business where they would come into your gym, help you get predictable leads, help you sell them. They basically gave you a plug and play. They licensed you their model that he did for like maybe 5 or 10 gyms. He ran that business with his wife, Layla Hormozi, for, I'm just going to throw out a number, somewhere between probably 5 and 10 years. And they had a $40 million exit from that company. He also had a supplement company that they had a similar exit from. I think he only sold half of that company, so he still owned some of it. And then they had a software company called Allen, if I'm not mistaken, that they had an exit from. So long story short, he's got a great track record in business. What I would have loved to have seen from him, just very selfishly, is now see him start talking about these higher level things, right? Talking about mergers and acquisitions, start talking about building hundreds of millions of dollars in equity. Instead, he kept talking about that, getting your first client and knocking on doors, and it's like, I'm just being very selfish. He's very talented at that. He knows a lot about it, and I'm sure there's a lot of people thankful for it. But unfortunately, because he has not continued to evolve with that, I've outgrown him a little bit. Anyways, what I was saying is I'm scrolling through social media, and he made this post that I thought so clearly explained what I could not explain yesterday or last time we spoke. And in one sentence, he goes, the difference between someone who thinks like an entrepreneur and is an entrepreneur is having a stranger give you money. That's the only difference. Finding one stranger to give you money, that's when you become an entrepreneur. And I was like, man,
and not just because you're standing on the corner.
No, that's just a different flavor in entrepreneurship.
Right.
It all counts.
Right.
It's just some are
right.
thought about slightly differently. But no.
I did have someone walk up to me once in a bar and hand me a $5 bill and tell me I look savory.
You're an entrepreneur.
Does that make me an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I think you and I go to slightly different bars. That's our other podcast.
That's daily growth after dark.
So, okay. But so tying it all back together now that I've told a 10-minute story that went nowhere, where do you get that first client, right? And I know that's the big question. You touched on something that if I don't remember to, I'd love to circle back on, is getting the bravery to do it. But let's just talk specifically tactics. And before I get into listing off 5 ways I think you could go do it, I'm just going to tell you how I did it. So in college, I was very fortunate. I built just a little bit of a social media following. I'm not talking about millions of followers or anything like that, but I was a Division I quarterback. And then I did sign some very small modeling contracts. So I had, I don't know, maybe 15,000 Instagram followers. And I thought, man, I need to find a way to make money off this. I'm about to graduate. I certainly don't want to go get a job. Modeling is paying me literally nothing other than just stealing my soul. What can I do? So a lot of people think right away, what can I sell? I think that's kind of like the first question. And they try to think, man, I'm gonna build this fancy business, or I'm gonna find this really cool product. If you've never sold anything before, if you've never been an entrepreneur, I think the best place to start is almost always a service-based business. The reason being is no cost involved, right? You can fulfill on the service. And ultimately, that's what is business.
It's a service.
It's a service, right? You're going out and solving problems, whether it's for another business, whether it's for an individual. So something that somebody would already do, you just do it for them and have them pay you money.
Right.
Simple, right? So my thought was...
So you're in college, you're poor, you're hungry.
Very poor, very
hungry. You're going to start it. You want to start a service business. And your first thought was, I'm going to start a coaching business?
My first thought...
Or did you go through iterations?
No, my first thought was, I have a six-pack. I have 100 men in my DMs a week. Why don't I just try to turn the tables and see if I can say, hey, I can help you look like this. Now, to be fair, they were not in my DMs to get a six pack, at least not their own six pack.
Sure.
they were looking for my six pack.
Fair.
But
fair.
I thought if I could flip some of those conversations to be easy. Now, to my surprise, that almost didn't work. Right? I really wasn't. I wasn't getting. These were not inbound leads. Right? I wasn't sitting on some gold mine. But instead, what I did is I just started posting on my stories. Hey, I'm looking to help a few people lose some weight. If you're interested, reply to this. I reached out to my personal network. I tweeted it out. I literally made a Twitter account just for this. I didn't have any followers. But the biggest thing that I did was I put myself out there. I just asked. I made asks. Right? Your first.
Do you think that this is easier in the age of social media though? Because, I mean, so I've got a solid 15 years on you. And I remember the years when I would have friends who were becoming quote unquote entrepreneurs. And they would be like, they would start out reaching out to their personal network. And it was like, please be in my Cutco knives downline, right? Buy my knives or help sell my knives. And it was like pyramid stuff. And so I got so jaded by the amount of people doing that kind of stuff that the concept of me directly reaching out to my friends and family and being like, I'm starting a business. Would you be interested in being one of my first couple of clients? Was something that I had like a personal emotional resistance to. But I can see a world in which social media, I'm passively putting things out there and being like, if a friend or family who see this respond, cool. But I don't know that I would directly market to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So in you saying that, one thing I definitely hear is some limiting beliefs around sales. And
sure,
there's a few simple ways you can break that. First and foremost, I remind myself constantly that if I'm working in a business that I own, what I tell myself, and I used to read this off before sales calls, I have a solution to the problems of the people that I'm going to talk to today. Who am I to not share this with them? They take a weight loss example. The people I'm going to talk to today are overweight, likely depressed, likely in bad relationships, likely unhappy in general. And I have a solution. Who am I to not help them? And
were you making a direct pitch to those people, or were you just letting them know what you were doing and seeing who expressed interest?
That's a good question. When I first started, I think I was probably a little bit more aggressive. Like I didn't understand the idea of lead nurture, for example. So something one of the first ways that I consistently got clients, because for me, even when I got to a point where I had over 100,000 followers on Instagram, and I still never consistently got clients from that, as weird as that sounds. But what I did get, the first thing that was very consistent for me, the first funnel that really worked was a Twitter funnel. And what I would do is, and you might even remember this because this might have been how you and I connected a long time ago. I did something called Fitness Friday, where I did a Q&A session every Friday. I would just put out a tweet in the morning where I'd say, hey, for the next 4 hours, I'm going to answer your questions here. And usually what I do is I just attach some thirst trap picture where I just looked shredded and then just be like, if you have a question, here's my qualifications, reply in the comments. And I always made sure, because this is a very important culture piece for me and I wanted people to feel my energy, I always put at the end, and if you're not comfortable doing this in a public setting, my DMs are always open. And that was arguably the smartest thing I did, because for every one tweet I got with a question, I probably got 10 different DMs from people saying, hey, I really need help with this one thing.
And I slid into your DMs.
Yeah. And that was always the open, right? Because the second somebody lets down that wall and DMs you, if I could get somebody to DM me first, it was over. I was going to probably sell 50% of those people.
So I do remember, you had a social media presence that I saw, and I don't think I reached out to you for probably a solid 6 months or a year of just I don't even know if I followed you, but the algorithm just kept bringing you across my feed, right? But what I do remember in that was not any one particular message, but it was a style and approach of the way that you responded to people, and you were very professional. You were very generous with your time, I could tell. and you were very compassionate to the people that you're responding to. And so after a while, I was like, all right, like I came to a place where I was like, all right, there's an intersection of I have a goal. Um, I wasn't going to go to and hire an in-person trainer at a gym because that was a little bit beyond me financially at the time. And I was like, well, I'll reach out to somebody. And I've seen this guy on social media. He seems to be professional. He seems to know what he's doing. And he seems to be really kind. And then another big thing for me, although I don't know if I processed it this way at the time, was I noticed you had a lot of LGBTQ followers. And you did not come off with the presence of being LGBTQ, but you had a lot of followers and you clearly knew how to engage that community in a way that was open and generous and comfortable. And so for me, that was really important. And so then I messaged you and then we got on the phone
Yeah, there were,
after that.
looking back to when you and I would have connected, there were so many things that I was doing right that I did not know about. I just intuitively did them. But there were also a lot of things I was
Mm.
doing wrong. And it's so easy for me to now sit back having done this for a long time and having had
So
a fair amount
what
of
were you doing
success.
wrong?
Oh man, probably the lowest hanging fruit. Like if I can go back and just re-optimize that business, was I was making all these offers in the DMs, right? So DMs are a great place
Mm.
to have an initial conversation, but in a high ticket funnel, which to be fair, I was kind of running like a mid ticket funnel, if that makes sense, which as a
Mm-hmm.
business model is a bad idea, and I can explain that. But what I was doing is, message, and I just had a message sequence where it was like, so if I was messaging somebody first, I'd just be like, hey, my name's Trevor, thanks for following, something along those lines. Maybe I'd personalize it, maybe I wouldn't, depending on how many people I needed to message that day. But then I'd say, I'd love to hear about your health goals and see if I'd be a good fit for you as a trainer, which is like arguably the dumbest thing in the world because that's so me centered. Like go back to Jonna's message to you. If you really read the context to it, it doesn't say anything about Rob. It says everything about Jonna, right? It's like, hey, I
Right.
have this thing, and it would really be like it breathes commission breath. Like I could smell it
Yeah.
through the call. It just smells like commission breath. It's got nothing to do with what your needs are. It doesn't seek to understand anything about
Right.
you. And that's the mistake I was making. But the bigger one was, and Jonna, to be fair, made the same mistake. She went right into her sale in that first message, like, "Hey, here's the link. Book the call." I did it. I did it 10 steps worse. I would exchange one or two messages back and forth, and then I would just say, "Great, I've got two options. Here's a downloadable plan. It's $39, or I'll do one-on-one coaching with you. It's between $199 and $299 a month. Take your pick." And
Yep.
that was it. Like I had it baked in my brain that I was not going to get on a call with somebody until they paid me money.
So, well, okay. So, interesting fact here. So, I actually just went back and I found our DM exchange just now.
Screenshot that. I'll
Um,
put it on the YouTube.
okay, yeah. It was December 4th, 2019, and all I said
Okay.
was fact finding mission. What are your prices? That's all I said. And
Wow.
you responded, "Hey Robert, I'll include my info sheet and pricing. If you've got any questions for me, don't hesitate to ask." So you included it. You attached the info sheet. I responded with like, "Thanks, Trevor. Completely trust that your expertise is totally worth every dime. I'll need to save up a bit, but would like to treat myself to some personal investment in the new year. How long do you think is a reasonable amount of time to achieve some basic goals? I'm already relatively fit. I work hard and know how to eat pretty healthy. I would just like to tighten everything up and set a good foundation for myself." And then I gave you like one more two sentences about me, and then you responded, "Yeah, a few things make me happier." This is clearly a copy paste message that you had for me. Few things make me happier than someone wanting to invest themselves. Let's do this. I'd love to get on a call with you and talk through that, plus address any other questions you have. So right there in two conversation turns, you're already like, "Cool, I got it, man. Let's get on the call." You
Yeah.
give
So
me your appointment. You give me your appointment link to schedule a time.
I think I was
Uh,
starting to figure it out at that point that
yeah,
if I could just get somebody on a call, because it's the barrier in a funnel like that is just getting somebody to make a decision. Even if it's a no, that's
yeah,
totally fine. But when you're doing something in the DMs and making a pitch with prices, then at that
yeah.
point, there's no longer any pressure to make a decision. They just have all the information, and that's totally fine. Now, if you're running like a lower ticket funnel, that works. Which I was, my prices weren't that expensive then. I think it sounds like at that point I was starting to figure out I should probably be trying to get people on the phone.
Yeah, so it looks like so you sent me the appointment link, and then it looks like that was on December 4th. On December 7th, a day that will live in infamy, looks like I had not yet made an appointment, and you messaged me again and said, "Hey, hoping we can get a chance to chat this weekend." And I responded, "Yep, I'm had a busy weekend because we had grand ball for work." Um, and I said, I'll try to jump on tomorrow, set an appointment. And then there was like one more, like another couple of days went by and I hadn't done it. You pinged me one more time, just like are we doing this still or no? And I said, yep. And I
What did it
scheduled it
say?
for that
What was it?
afternoon.
Passive aggressive? Probably.
No, all I said was, "Hey Robert!" Exclamation point. Are we still getting on a call? And
Oh,
I
okay.
said, "Yep, just a crazy week. Scheduled time for Tuesday afternoon." And I remember I wasn't like, "Oh man, it's been so crazy." That was that week because it was Grand Ball week for us, which is like this massive fundraiser for the hospital. This black tie affair, whole crazy thing. We usually have my mom in town because that's when she also flies in to help us like decorate the house for Christmas. And so when I was like saying, "Oh, it's a crazy week," I was in the middle of like the ball, hosting family in town, doing a whole bunch of stuff, and I think I probably just kept forgetting to actually go in and push the button and do it.
Gotcha.
So it took you two there was no push, but there was just checking, are we doing this or not? And then we that was the end of our DMs. This is actually literally the last time we've ever DM'd
That's hilarious. At least
after
on Twitter,
that.
yeah. So
At
okay,
least on Twitter, yeah.
so a couple thoughts from that. So none of that. Listening back to that, I know none of that was copy and paste on my end, and the reason I know that is because nothing you said really fell into like a sequence I had, because there were really only
Okay.
like three or four possibilities of answers where I had a Trello board built out where it's like it was like an if this then this type process of like a map where I could basically just go copy and paste and just throw the message in there. And our conversation, I wasn't surprisingly, I wasn't getting a lot of people that were just in my DMs like, "Hey, I want to do some kind of investment." Like people weren't speaking like that. It was usually me needing to convince them. They're reaching out for free advice, and I had to overcome that barrier of this might be an investment kind of thing. Like let's talk about that. Because I'm going from free lead nurture of, hey, I'm doing a free Fitness Friday Q&A. If you have any questions, message me. Right. So it's a very free focused thing. So that in a
Yeah,
funnel like that, the filter or the constraint is you've got to find an efficient way to weed out people who just want information versus people who are ready to take some type of action. So right away, I know
sure.
those weren't copy and paste because that wasn't the norm for me. I
So
know
let me ask you this. In this particular case, or sorry, let me let you finish. Go ahead.
I do, the only that one thing I knew I did really well then, and this would help. I'd like I don't know why I knew this was so helpful, but what I would do is in a conversation like that, I had this system where I'd send you a message, and I might have 100 conversations going on at once. There's no way in my mind I was thinking 2 days later, oh, I should like connect with Robbie and see if he's scheduled. Even just trying to scroll through because I was sending so many outbound messages, there's no way I would find it. So when I sent something like that I knew there was high intent on your end, but maybe not 100% chance you'd answer, I would screenshot it and I would write how many days, right? So I put like 2 and the letter D. That meant, okay, follow up in 2 days. And then I screenshot that. And then I've had this process for probably 10 years where I go through my screenshots every morning and I put all the calendar reminders in. So I know for sure I just had a calendar reminder that said, reach out to at, Rob or whatever your Twitter at was. You could shamelessly plug it now if you want.
RB Matheny.
RB Matheny, baby. So I had in my calendar at RB Matheny follow up today. And that's why those happened. And that process obviously probably made me a good little chunk of money. So go Trevor.
I thought we were just vibing. I didn't realize. I guess I was important enough to have major calendar items. So there you go.
Yeah. No, it's all systems. Like that was all systematic.
So it's a good point though, because in this particular case, I saw you on Twitter. Our initial connection before we got on the phone was through Twitter DMs. That was clearly a marketing strategy that you had. So for people just starting out though, like, would you recommend still Twitter, now X, or what marketing channels for people who probably don't have a lot of capital to invest in it, need as much ROI on what they do invest? Um, back. So where would you recommend they start?
Yeah. First and foremost, before you start reaching out to random people, whether it's whoever it might be, and we can talk about who to reach out to, I would just quickly and efficiently come up with a good offer. Because at the time, that was probably something I didn't figure out until 5 or 6 years in, was, once you have an irresistible offer and you know how to word it well in a sentence or two, all of your outreach becomes infinitely easier. So at the time, I might have been like, oh, like I'd love to be your coach. Clearly that's very me centered. That doesn't do anything for Rob. Eventually, and when things really started clicking in our next company, which was Prosper Wellness, we just had a great offer. We said, hey, we'll guarantee you'll release fat. And we always would say release fat because you can't say fat loss on Facebook ads. And that's where we were doing a lot of our acquisition. So we'd say we'd guarantee you'll release fat. And, and if you don't, we'll work with you until you do. Like, it's just a very simple offer. Like, basically, once you're taking all the risk on your end, once you come in, it's done. This problem will be solved. So find ways where you can frame your offers in a way where, obviously it's ethical, obviously it's something you can fulfill on, but it takes the risk off the table for the person that you're talking to, right? And you can do that for just about any offer. Now, going back to answering your question, where do you find these people? The best place to start is your personal network, because anybody you speak with, for them to buy something from you, you're gonna have to overcome the hurdle, which is know, like, and trust. They're gonna have to know you. They're gonna have to like you. They're gonna have to trust you, and they're gonna have to trust in themselves that whatever your product is or service is, it'll actually work for them specifically. And a lot of times that's just trusting themselves, because there would be all these products out there that I think probably look good, but I might not actually trust myself to use it or trust myself to follow through on it. That's a different type of trust.
You said know, like, and trust?
Know, like, and trust.
Is that so? It's just interesting because for networking, I have a very similar 3-word thing. Building your network and just developing professional relationships that will help you along the way. And it's just contact work, I call it. And it's be seen, be known, then be heard, in that order, which is good. Know, like, and trust. But be seen, just be in their presence. In doing rounding or going to social events or happy hours, just be seen. Get them familiar with seeing you in their space. Then be known. Hi, my name is, what's going on with you? Just building genuine relationship with positive intent, not with transactional intent, but genuine intent. And then, and only then, be heard. I've got something, or I want to ask something, or, I want to make some sort of exchange in that way. Be seen, be known, be heard. So that's what I hear you say is you've got to kind of know me. You've got to develop a relationship with me, and then you'll put your investment in me because you trust me, in that order. But the key to it, I think, and this is what was a differentiator for you, because I'm a cynic when it comes to who's selling things through social media. I think not a cynic's probably not the word. I'm skeptical, right? But the differentiator for you was that you followed that order, know, like, and trust, and you did it in a way that was genuine. It wasn't salesy. It felt as if you had a genuine positive intent, no matter what direction the conversation went. Yeah. Obviously, I wasn't expecting to become friends or anything. I knew we were you're trying to sell something. I'm seeking out a service. Obviously, I was aware of that, but within that context, it felt genuine.
Yeah, it's something that I don't think you would have known at the time was I was really fighting off a scarcity mindset too, and I didn't know that. I didn't understand the concept of scarcity and abundance until probably say 2020, or 2021 even. So at that time, I knew intuitively that putting out free not just content, right? A lot of people put out free content. It's like they just send out a tweet or send out this useless information that doesn't matter. I mean, even you and I are learning that right now. Like what we're putting out, we don't want to just be like talking heads that are just randomly dumping things. We actually want to put something out that's useful. Like, even if somebody were to listen to this and never work with us in any capacity or never take any next steps or never anything, like, we want this to be independently useful. And that's the mark of great organic content or a great know, like, trust factor, is that abundance mindset of like, I'm just going to go out and do so much great for other people that eventually that'll come back to me. And at the time, I remember now looking back on it, being just fighting that off so hard, because I'd get in these ruts of like, man, I'm doing so much damn work for these people and nobody's buying my shit. and it would just like grind my gears. And then every now and then somebody like a Rob would pop up, and because I'd been nurturing you for 6 months, you'd pop up and say, hey, like I'm ready to make some type of investment myself, and I think you're the person I'd like to do that with. Like, let's talk about it. And it would just give me like just enough like fuel to keep going. Now when I build things, maybe it's just getting older and having experience of this and being more mature. Maybe I truly have developed an abundance mindset. Now when I do this, I mean, I can go out in the marketplace and just do free, and even if nobody buys something from me, I just have this faith that it'll work. If that makes sense.
It does make sense. Is it possible? Here's my question: is it possible to go too far with that? Like to go further than you should, to give more than I don't know if should is the right word.
I think it just happens if you don't know what you're doing. I think it can be a very dangerous, because that's a really good question, but I only think that happens if you don't know what you're doing. I'll give you an example. Like back then, if let's say I had this massive abundance mindset and I just really wanted to help people, the place where I could have done that the wrong way would have been, yeah, in the DMs I'll help you. Yeah, you know what? I'll just send you a plan. Yeah, I'll just jump on a call with you. Like just kind of jumping into all these things that, like, okay, but then how am I going to make any money doing this? And I think the differentiator is a very clean place to draw the line is you can give away all the information for free. In a service-based business, it's the implementation that people will pay for.
Yeah.
Right. You go scroll through my Instagram, go scroll through my Twitter, go scroll through my TikTok, go scroll through my YouTube. There's not much that's behind a paywall that I haven't actually said for free somewhere. Now, it might take you 100 hours to compile the information, and it might take another 100 hours to piece it together. And maybe if I were better at content, it wouldn't. But you still got to find a way to go take action. And that's the piece you're going to pay for, is having someone to hold you accountable, maybe having somebody to just do it for you. So that's a clean place to draw that line. But I don't think there's too much information you can give. But if you start doing the implementation for free, that's not going to scale anywhere.
Well, and I don't think we want to get into this today, but maybe in a future week. I think it would be an interesting thing for us to talk about. In the day and age of generative AI, and a service-based business like coaching or something like that, how does a real life person differentiate themselves from what I could get from ChatGPT with the appropriate prompt? Beyond, and I have several answers in my head. But I think it's something that it's worth talking about, because I think entrepreneurs in a service-based space, especially this kind of space, are really going to have to identify those things and zero in on that's their tactic.
I'll dump the two that come to mind for me, and then I'm really interested to hear what your thoughts are on it. The first one, and I remember feeling this intuitively when I was maybe around 2020-ish, where some of these automations were really starting to become popular in our space in health. And it was, I think people will pay for a feeling, right? Like, there's no doubt in my mind you would have rather paid $400 a month to work with me than work with a robot, because I'm gonna actually, 100%. I'll empathize, I'll care about you, we'll form a relationship. So that was the first thought, where it was like, yeah, we're getting there, but I don't think we're that close. The second thing that I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head is, you and I both know when it comes to something like ChatGPT, the power is not in ChatGPT, it's in the person that's prompting ChatGPT. And for most markets, it's not sophisticated enough to know how to prompt it, right? You're usually seeking out experts because you don't know how to do something. So, I have a background in nutrition. I could prompt ChatGPT to build me a beautiful, functional, and useful meal plan. I couldn't name any of my clients.
But you got to know the right questions to ask.
Yeah, none of my clients before they've worked with us could have done that. So, what do you think are the other?
Well, so oddly enough, in grad school, I helped run a research lab. I worked for one of our professors, and she ran a lab that was focused on what's officially known as computer-mediated communication. So any kind of communication that occurs over balloons, again, any kind of communication that occurs over, like, whether it be text, internet, that kind of stuff. And one of the last studies we were doing was an exploratory study to potentially get NIH grant funding to do a deeper dive, but it was people's trust in algorithms for diagnosing skin cancer. And so the setup of the experiment was Um, if we could tell you that you had a spot on your skin and you snap a picture of that spot, the algorithm could tell you whether or not it was skin cancer with the same degree of accuracy, if not even better accuracy than a physician would. How likely would you be to trust that diagnosis versus saying, no, I really need to go be seen at a physician, by a physician? And so fast forward from running that lab, I was giving a talk to a group of ophthalmologists, eye surgeons, on the importance of trust, building trust with each other, building trust in the organization, building trust particularly with their patients. And one of the physicians asked me, she was like, I'm very busy in my day. I've got to get to clinic. I've got all these things. Like, why on earth are we here talking about trust? You know, she was feeling like this talk was something that was kind of vapid and like it was, you know, like I was going to make them start coloring and singing Kumbaya at some point. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, quite frankly, I said, let me tell you, this is the last research study that I did. And what we found was that the only reason people chose the physician over the algorithm was trust. That was their big variable. And that trust came from relationship. It came from rapport. And so the thing that differentiates, I think, any type of coaching, medical services, anything from generative AI is that relational factor of there's something about the human interaction, the nurturing, the trust, that dynamic, that you start to learn my personal context. And I may not know the right questions to ask, but you can guide me through the conversation. But there's it's a trust thing, especially when the generative AI can come away with an algorithm that is pretty damn accurate. So for a lot of our physicians, I said, here's the deal. You come into a patient interaction, you get a series of variables that you get from them. You look at, their symptoms, you do some tests, you get their labs, you look at the variables. You're essentially a walking algorithm. You look at all these variables, you make a diagnosis, you make a treatment recommendation. You are a walking algorithm. There is nothing that you just did that at this point generative AI can't do. The only thing that you can do that AI can't is build a relationship and build that trust, build that rapport. And that's the reason why we're here talking about trust today.
Well, and I hope that's a catalyst for some doctors to pull their heads out of their asses because in my experience, especially with my wife, who, is very medically complex, that's been the difference between doctors that are even just okay and doctors that are piss poor is the good ones. When you walk in the office, it's like, hey, Trevor, hey, Cassie, how are you guys? Hey, I remember you. I don't care if they remember anything about me. It's like, it literally just doesn't feel like I'm meeting them for the first time, even though I've seen them for 10 appointments now. And that's
right.
For me, that's where I'm like, man, like, could this have been an email? Or like, can I just start talking to AI? Because I have at least, because I've got some autoimmune issues. So I see some different specialists where I can think off the top of my head, 2 of them, I would rather talk to AI than actually go in and have that appointment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I don't want to get off on a side tangent, so I'll bring us back. But I think that there are some real barriers.
We should just rebrand the podcast as Side Tangents.
Side tangents.
It's more fun.
Yeah, I think there are some real barriers to help that get in physicians' ways from doing that well in terms of like how much their time costs and that they've got to cover their salaries and that kind of stuff. But I do think even if it's a 5-minute interaction, a really good, whether we're talking a physician, we're talking a coach, we're talking some other service representative, a good skilled individual can build that rapport and build that personal interest with somebody and be genuine and be present in the moment, even if it's a 5-minute interaction. I do think that can happen.
Cassie and I talk about this a lot. We've got a few doctors. I would say there's a healthy split where 50% of them clearly have natural emotional intelligence and 50% of them naturally have none. And you can tell, like, to the point where they're probably somewhere on the spectrum. Like, it's just the emotional side of it is clearly something's not clicking for them. But that's not what we grade them on, because I can think of one doctor specifically where, and it's one of Cassie's doctors, the emotional intelligence out of 100 is 0. There is none, absolutely none. But this doctor I love because I can tell he is trying, and that's all I care about. I'm certain what he does is, he's in the meeting, or he's in the appointment. He goes back to his little desk and he just jots down a couple notes, and not just the notes about her health, but yeah, we talked about XYZ. So then when we come back in, it's like clockwork. He's like, oh yeah, how's that one thing we talked about? Like, just stone cold. And it's like, dude, you know what? Even though that was the most awkward thing, you tried, and like, I love you for that. And it's just so many of the doctors don't care.
Yeah, he took an interest, and that's what matters.
Yeah, but the irony is, like, I know for a fact, like, I can so clearly tell he's not interested. He doesn't care.
Sure. But something in there that you mentioned, you're like, he probably went away from the initial interaction and wrote some notes to help jog his memory. So now you're talking about workflows that are important to being able to develop trust, to develop those clients. I know I want to move us on and talk about what workflows are important into this sort of lead generation, lead nurturing kind of thing. Before you answer that question, though, we talked about Twitter, social media. Is there any other, just like, give me the 3 or 4 bullet list of other channels for marketing that people should start with?
Yeah, I mean, hit your quote unquote warm leads. Who already knows you, likes you, trusts you. Go through your phone contacts. Well, start with any former professional contacts. Right? There's probably a lot of people that might have been in your boat a couple of years ago, where they're sitting in a job. They would, they haven't gotten that DM from Jana yet on LinkedIn to become their own boss.
Good old Jana.
Yeah,
Jana's working it for April, man.
So who have you worked with that already knows, likes, and trusts you, especially on a professional level? Reach out to them. Maybe, and especially if they have a problem that you can solve. Go through your phone contacts. If I open up my phone, I probably have 300 contacts in there. Go through them. Go through your email contacts. Go through your social media contacts. Go through your neighbors, right? Everybody lives somewhere. Even if you're homeless, you live around other people. You lay down your head at night near other people. Everybody in the world is an influencer. The only difference is at what scale. You might be an influencer in your house. You might be an influencer in your neighborhood. You might be an influencer in your city. You might be an influencer on Instagram. We're all influencers. It's just figuring out who do you have influence with. Go talk to those people.
That's good. We need to start a list of inspiring quotes from Daily Health. That's going to be the first one. Everyone in the world is an influencer. It's just a difference of what scale.
Yeah, some of us dance on TikTok, and some of us, just influence their kids.
Some of us dance on stage. It's fine. Yeah. Some of us dance with a pole.
Hey, that's the After Dark podcast. Leave it.
Okay, so let's talk about workflows then.
Yeah.
You already mentioned one workflow where you talked about how you took screenshots of DMs, or other messages, and then you just wrote a note for yourself, like how many days to follow up, and then you had those, and you'd go through your screenshots, and then you'd calendar those, and that would remind you. So that's a great hack, just to like, how do I do this and keep it, manageable in my head, in my workflow. What are some other workflow hacks that you've got for people who are doing lead generation, lead nurturing?
The best way to win lead generation is asking more. The more you ask, the more sales you're going to make. Sales are a lag indicator, but the lead indicator is asking. So what I've always found, whether it's my health, whether it's sales, whether it's something else in business, what gets measured gets managed. If I measure something, even if I'm not consciously making changes around it, subconsciously I'll start to improve that data point that I'm measuring. So I literally have a tracking sheet where I just measure how many asks I make, or how many outbound messages am I doing per day. And depending on the type of business or the offer, I would bare minimum do 50 asks every single day, of whether it's just a cold reach out just to start the conversation, whether it's a literal message, hey, I've got this thing, I think you might like it. Can I send something your way that'll help? But doing at least 50 of those asks. It seems silly, it seems simple, but if you're not tracking it, a lot of times we fall into this place of, because I'm like you, Rob, you and I both, we don't naturally love to go out and sell. I've just done a lot of it, and at this point, I'm more comfortable with it. But we don't love it. So naturally, we're going to kind of put our hands up, kind of lean back and not do a lot of it. But if you're tracking it, if you're measuring it, it's going to get managed. You're going to do better at it. So I just, tracking dashboard, 50 messages a day, non-negotiable.
Well, I think the important piece of that is what you're doing for yourself there is you are setting a behavior-based goal, not an outcome-based goal. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of people make, I've made this mistake quite a bit, is when the outcomes aren't fully within your control because you can't control the market, you can't control other people, but they try to say, they try to create outcomes. I'm going to go and get 5 clients in my first month. You can't actually control whether or not that's going to happen. What you can control is the behaviors that I'm going to do that are going to increase the likelihood I will get those 5 clients. I'm going to do 50 asks a day. I'm going to follow up on at least 10 leads to nurture those leads. I'm going to, you can set the behavior based goals that are going to position you to achieve the outcome that you want and increase the likelihood that you will actually get there. And I'd really encourage folks to think about that. Go back, and if you look at your goals on your sheet, on your vision board, and if they are outcome based goals, you're probably setting yourself up for frustration mentally and emotionally. But if you can walk away from your day saying, I showed up for myself and I hit these behavior goals every day. It's the same thing with like fitness and weight loss, right? You can have a goal of, I want to lose 10 pounds, and you'll eventually get there. But what really matters is, I want to achieve this in my nutrition today. I want to achieve this in my exercise today. And as long as I show up every day and do the right behaviors, I can trust that I will eventually get to the fitness goal that I have. But I need to focus on the journey rather than the destination on this one.
Yeah, and that's a concept that scales really well, is focusing on those behaviors. Whenever I build a sales team, whether it's been an internal sales team for us, whether it's going out and helping somebody else build a sales team, what I'll do in their first month is set KPIs that are actually not focused around sales or outcomes that they don't yet have control or that we can't reasonably predict. Instead, I'll do a behavior-based KPI. So for example, with SDRs, which are junior sales reps, because a lot of times when you're hiring a sales team, you're not bringing in somebody that's just going to come in right away and close for you. You're usually bringing them in as an SDR, and then they can grow into a closer relatively quickly. Instead of saying, hey, you need to set 5 appointments every single day for our closers, I'll say, look, you just need to do 100 outbound calls and 50 outbound emails. Now, the good ones, you'll notice right away they're going to do more. But they don't see minimums as like, cool, I hit this and then I mentally check out. That's usually, if you see that within somebody's first week, they're probably not going to last to week 4. They'll usually see themselves out if you set up good guardrails. But that focusing on behaviors scales really well when you get into team building as well. But going back, I mean, I literally remember I would just, when I was in your DMs and we were messaging, I mean, 2019, I would have been in a just disgusting cockroach infested apartment in Tampa with my wife. Now she's my girlfriend. I don't even think we were engaged then. Nah, we probably would have been engaged then. Yeah, we were. She's gonna watch this and be like, Trevor, what? You don't know that? We were definitely engaged, honey. But I remember sitting in that apartment and I just had a notebook and I would just sit there and just like send a message, tally, send a message, tally. Or I'd send 5 and then do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tally. And I would just like, I would let myself enjoy the serotonin release of watching the notebook just fill up with tallies, because that was the win. That's what I could control. Couldn't control if somebody else responded, couldn't control if somebody else bought, couldn't control anything else except my effort and what I put into it.
Learning to love the habit, learning to love the process.
Yes.
Not just the outcome.
Yep.
Yeah. So I know we're starting to run short on time. Let me ask you this. I have 2 questions, actually. Curiosity, and if we can hit them both really quickly. Tell me one thing you wish you would have known. If you could go back to 2019 and tell 2019 Trevor something.
That's probably a lot of things. I wouldn't change anything. I want to preface it that way. Like I've really enjoyed my journey, and like even the failures, I've learned so much more from the things. Like I learned so much from failures. I don't learn anything from wins. A lot of times it actually just reinforces bad behaviors. But some things that would have been helpful to learn sooner, definitely the power of consistency, right? That, I've internalized that now. I know that if I need to do 50 or 100 outbound messages or whatever, I've so incredibly internalized that I actually enjoy it. Like if I have a product I'm selling or a service I'm selling, I actively look for ways to fail and how many times in a day somebody can tell me no, because I know that's just a lead indicator to getting to sales, which will be the lag indicator. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like how many people can I get to tell me no today? How many people can I get to make a decision today? Like I look forward to that. Back then, I still dreaded that. and was still only getting like these just peaks and valleys off of the, oh, I made a sale. Oh man, it's been 3 days. I don't know where the next sale is coming from. And that was very stressful. So just knowing that consistency, I think part two of that was maintaining the consistency with that funnel, because I had something that was working, and albeit now with different skill sets, I probably could have fine tuned it. But I think eventually I got a little bit burned out from that funnel, and then I just ran from it for greener pastures, when in reality, now this is true in life, but not just business, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And it's usually not. You might have a vantage point where it looks greener, but it's just not, because we were doing and I say we, at that point it was just me. I was doing that, DM funnel, and then eventually kind of became a call booking funnel. And I so desperately wanted it to be more predictable that I was hell bent on learning to run paid ads. And I paid multiple different agencies to teach me how to run paid ads. And eventually I just ended up learning on my own. But through that process of learning paid ads, I eventually stopped doing that organic funnel, which was silly, because in stopping that funnel,
working for you.
Yeah, I also stopped doing content. I also stopped lead nurturing. I stopped a lot of things. And even if you're doing things that aren't the most optimal, if you just keep showing up and doing them, they'll almost always pay off. I tell that to weight loss clients. It's like, you could literally do the wrong diet, but if you're just consistent with it, it's going to work. It might not be the best thing ever, but you could literally do the wrong things and you'll lose weight. It's the consistency.
So I actually heard two things. I heard two things in there. One, you explicitly said the power of consistency, but the thing that you alluded to, but I don't think you explicitly said, that I want people listening to this to catch, is embracing your mistakes. Giving yourself the freedom to make mistakes, and then embracing them when you do, because that's where, what I heard you say is, that's where your real learning and your real growth came from, was failing forward. Giving yourself the ability to do that.
Reframing failure as, I know, reframing it is not a bad thing, because for so many people, failure is a loaded word. Like, you fail and it's just the worst thing ever. It's, you're done, it's over, you lost. And I hear the word failure and I kind of get like a little like tingly and excited, because that's just where I get the chance to learn. That's where I get the chance to grow. It's where that's my chance to become a better person. It's exciting. And not just in business, but like in my marriage, right? I'll make a mistake and my wife will call me out because she knows I love feedback. And instead of being like, damn, I fucked up, this is terrible, like my wife's going to leave me, something like that, I say, no, this is awesome. It just brought to light something I'm not doing great yet, but now I have the opportunity to be better. Whereas if she just sat there and didn't call that out, or if I just continued to fail and maybe didn't notice it, or maybe even got lucky and got some positive reinforcement, all that's doing is reinforcing bad habits, right? We'll do all these like silly things in business, randomly get a sale and think, oh, well, I guess these silly things are working.
Yeah, the underlying belief that I think that people have to have in order to be comfortable with that is, there is enough intrinsic value in you and in what you bring and in who you are, that if you make a mistake, that does not cause that value to go away. It does not crumble your reputation. It does not just tear everything down. You can make a mistake, and the only time you fail is if you just leave the process. But if you stay in the process, even if you make 10 more mistakes, but you stay in the process and you're still learning, there's enough value in who you are and what you're doing. You can do that, and it will eventually pay off if you keep failing forward and keep growing. So last question, I promise, last question. So I got my first person. They want to work with me on this engagement. The most awkward thing: how do I set my pricing? Okay, here's what it's going to cost. How do I do it with confidence? I don't overshoot that, but I don't also undersell myself.
Yeah, there's a few different approaches with that. I'll tell you what I did and what I've done and what's worked. So price is, so I have an undergrad degree I almost said marketing, in economics. So I always default back to that when it comes to pricing. It's all a big supply and demand equation, and really your fair market value is literally just whatever somebody else will pay for it. I've run the same program and charged people a $29 a month subscription for it, and charged different people $7,800 for it. Same program, and they were equally happy. So if that tells you anything, it's very arbitrary, which is what probably makes it so difficult. When you're first starting out, if you have even any confidence at all, just go charge people. Pick a number. Go see what people that are doing similar products or services, probably services, but find people that are doing something similar and charge what they charge, or maybe just to gain confidence, charge 10 to 15% less. Usually as a founder or as a solopreneur, your brain subconsciously is optimizing for just getting people in the door. What you're doing is you're protecting against a no. Your brain does not want to be told no in the beginning, because those no's just feel so detrimental. They feel like almost identity attacks, like, no, you suck, you're not good enough. So what we do is we just price way too low, when in reality what you should do is charge market value. Be okay with maybe only having 30% of people say yes, because then you still have wiggle room. You can always reoffer lower. You can always reoffer with pricing plans. If you just come in with this super low price, there's nothing you can do, and you're just going to have clients that they're going to expect too much. You've set bad expectations. It's all around bad. Now, an entirely different way to go about this, though. If you have not had any clients, you don't have any confidence around pitching somebody, instead what you can do is you can pitch somebody and say, hey, I'm looking for my first 5 clients in the space, or I'm looking to help 2 people in the space. Ways I've framed it in the past is I just want to confirm this is something I really want to do. I'm very talented at it. I know I can help you, blah, 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 blah. I'm willing to do it for free. However, so I don't want you paying me any money. My only ask is that you make a $500 donation to a charity of your choice. Because I know psychologically, if you don't have any skin in the game, you're not going to take this seriously. And it's not going to be a good relationship for either of us. Right? So I'm not asking you to pay me, but I am asking you to have some skin in the game with a, reasonable. Yeah. Because
I think that's good for building confidence for sure. And also just getting a sense of what are people willing to pay for this service, even if they're not paying me.
The only thing you don't want to do, because I did this so many times when I first started, is just taking on random people for free where they don't have any skin in the game in any capacity. I promise you, they won't take it seriously. They won't get any results. It'll be a waste of your damn time. And nobody wins that situation, because those who pay attention, and those who pay more attention. So those who don't pay don't pay any attention.
Yeah, the only variation to that, I think, and this depends on what kind of business you're running, if this model would work for you. But the advice that I've been given, if you're doing a service that is like helping a business with an initiative on some level, your pricing can look something like, my general fee is I get 10% of whatever you stand to make off of this product. So if you're going to grow and you're going to make $1 million this year off of this initiative that I'm going to help you do, my fee is $100,000. If it's $50,000 that you're going to make off of this initiative, my fee is $5,000. And we estimate that up front, what we project you're going to make off of that initiative. And then we say my fee is 10%. 10% is probably industry standard there with that type of sort of consulting. But you can go lower, you can go 5%, and build your confidence and then go from there. But that's a very specific kind of service, and not everything. I think most people are going to be looking at doing something more like what you're saying, of like, this is just this product. Here's how much it costs. Here's how much the subscription costs, and go at it from there and try to do the market research to see, am I somewhere in the appropriate bandwidth?
Yeah. If you've never done anything as an entrepreneur, it's going to take a very rare person for their first business or first entrepreneurial opportunity to be B2B, because what you just described is obviously that's a structure that works if the person you're helping is making money.
Correct.
But if you're just doing something that's B2C, if it's weight loss, if it's relationships, if it's dating, if it's mowing somebody's lawn, if it's just a service that the other person is not making money on the other end, obviously you would be able to structure that. Now, I love that structure, but for somebody who's just doing their first deal ever, and if you're doing it by yourself, I'm not trying to create any limiting beliefs. I wonder if that might be a little too complicated for somebody who's like literally never done it. Like I always just say, like, if you've never done anything like that, just go sell some random service just once, just to get your feet wet, and then go jump in the deep end.
Well, like I said, I think it's a very specific type of service that you're offering in order to be able to do that. They're making money off of the service that you're offering them. That's the key. That's when you say that I get a stake of what you stand to gain as a result.
And for somebody to be able to do that, they've clearly built up a ton of like. So I mean, I'll take you for example. You could make that offer. Even a couple of years ago, before you had broken into any type of consulting or anything, you could have made that offer because you had a track record of doing that just inside of organizations. The question I would ask somebody in your situation though is, man, what took you so long?
What have you done?
Yeah, no, forget that. Like, what took you so long? Why? Because to be able to make an offer like that, you've got to have a heck of a track record. Like, I am just now being able to make offers like that after having been an entrepreneur for 10 years. Like, you've actually built up the track record. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can say if somebody asks, well, tell me what you've done that makes it worth it. I can say I've created an $800,000 revenue swing in a matter of a few months. I can say
$800,000 per month swing, correct?
Per month, $800,000 per month swing. Yeah, or I've turned, I've turned a 60% vacancy, staffing vacancy around in a matter of a couple of months.
Yeah.
So I can point to those things for sure, and I think. But I think a lot of people can point to more than they think they can. And they wouldn't be out there if they could. I mean, some people are truly college Trevor, just like trying to dip a toe in the water. But I think a lot of people are a little bit further along than that.
That's a good point.
And have done more and have more of a track record. They just don't know how to frame it. They don't know how to talk about it as a result. So, I think it's an awkward question for me, and I will tell you honestly, it's one that you and I have chatted about. Of like having the confidence to put the offer out there and say this is what my service costs. Because I feel in myself that protecting against the no.
That was a really good reminder because I do occasionally forget like my first ever business I started when I was like 19. And I'm not talking about like lemonade stands. I'm talking about real businesses, LLCs that were like legally structured. Like there was no stakes to lose. Like I was all upside at that point. I didn't have any responsibilities. I was probably still getting help from my parents at that point, or at least, I was dating Cassie. I was getting help from her. Right. So there's no risk involved. Whereas, if I were talking to myself now, if I had never made the jump, if I'd been a career these last 10, 15 years, and now I was looking to jump into it, that's different. It's got to be scarier. It's got to be harder. It's got to be, you have stakeholders in your life that all of a sudden you have to think about. What I'm curious about is if you're that person who, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, and you're looking to jump into your first business, or you're looking to take advantage of Jana's LinkedIn message and be your own boss. One thing that I think gets overlooked is go partner with somebody. You don't have to do this alone. In fact, you had asked earlier, what's one thing you would go back and tell yourself? That's actually the one thing that I did not have any concept of. Like I was doing the consistency thing. I just didn't understand the psychology behind it. Right? I was doing a lot of these things, but I just didn't understand why they worked. I was just doing them because it was intuitive. One thing I was not doing was I thought I had to do everything by myself. I thought I had to have 100% equity. And yeah, that was where my scarcity mindset was really manifesting. Whereas I didn't understand, like you can go find a partner who is either good at something you're not good at, or even just enjoys the thing you don't enjoy. And that can become a force multiplier, because I'd rather have 50% equity in a $5 million business than 100% equity in a $100,000 business.
Yeah. I mean, and to your point, for the person who is the stakes are a little bit higher, they're a little bit more unsure, i.e. myself, partnering with somebody. I mean, you've been talking to me for 5 years about stepping out into consulting and stepping out into even developing a content presence and that kind of stuff. The first real step I've taken to doing it is when you and I started partnering together on it, because that made it feel much more tangible, made it feel or much more doable, achievable.
I wish I could transfer my mindset to you sometimes, because like I see the thing, like your track record is literally more impressive than mine, which is so cool. And on the open market is so valuable. Like the only reason my mindset is different is because I just don't know any other way. I know I've told you the story, but when I graduated college, I told my wife, my girlfriend then, I said, Cassie, I'm not getting a job unless somebody offers me $250,000 a year. And guess what? A kid who got straight C's and an economics degree, nobody's offering him that. So that was basically my way of saying, like, I'm not going to get a job. I'm going to figure something else out. And yeah, it was tough in the beginning, but there's no risk. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? I just move back home or something, like, boo-hoo. Right? But so because of that mentality, like, now I've kind of built over the years just this probably bold, like, there's no way I'm going to fail. This will work. I will find a way, because time and time again, that's how it's played out. Ultimately, any skill set you have is worth something in a traditional employment setting, right? That whatever value you're bringing to the company, let's say, is worth 5% of the value you bring, maybe, which means if you made an $800,000 swing, and let's say you were solely responsible for that, obviously I'm sure there's other factors at play. Well, that would mean if you're worth 5% of that, you're getting grossly underpaid. But in open market as an entrepreneur, now the value you bring, now you're getting, I'm not going to say 100% of it because there's other fees that go into it, but your value is whatever the margin is, right?
Right.
So now if I'm bringing, let's just say I'm bringing $500,000 of value to the market, right? I could go do that inside of a company all day long, and I could let them pay me $50,000, right? Because what would 5% of $500,000 be? I'd sound like a doofus. I actually don't. That'd be
$25,000.
Yeah, so I can go let them pay me $25,000. So maybe it's more like 10%. That's probably more reasonable, right? I think a lot of jobs you're probably bringing that much. So I could let them do that, right? Or I could go bring $500,000 to an open marketplace, and let's just say EBITDA, right? You're probably looking at 30 or 40% of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, this is like the word. Like, I need to, like, probably someday come back and just, like, re-record this in a way with the math and have it all make sense, because we're an hour in and my brain's turning to mush. But, like, I wish people could just internalize that, because the skill set, I'll tie this together. The skill set you have is worth so much more on the open market. It's not even funny.
Well, and I think the underlying point there is it's not about the ability, it's about the mindset. Because you led into that with, I wish I could transfer my mindset to you sometimes. And I think that's something, we're out of time today, but I think it's worth talking about next time, is the limiting beliefs and the mindsets that we need to have, and how to overcome that. Because I think it's a lot of people, that's their struggle, is they've got the raw skills, they've got the ability, but now they need to believe it, and they need to have the right mindset to free themselves up to go do it. So I think that's next time.
All right, let's talk about that next. Is that the pod?
Is that the pod?
It's the pod. That's the pod.